So let us start off by looking at the first passage of reading comprehension. Let's go through these slides together. Let's just have a look at these and then we'll move. So the very first line happens to have this expression. Now capital D, capital B, along with the fact that there was a nosebleed involved, tells you that it is likely to be a person. Now this expression is French for Duke of Berry. So the junior members of the French royal family used to get this title. Subsequently, a lot of monarchs of the Bourbon dynasty, French Civil War guys, they bestowed this title on their grandsons. So when you say Duke de Berry, you're basically talking about somebody who is a junior member of the French royal family. So during a partridge hunt, and then somebody else who quit his job and went surfing. Both of them are mentioned in A History of Fatigue, a new book by Georges Vigarello, and this translated by somebody. So the very first paragraph sets the tone that we are talking about a particular book and what the theme of that book is. Here is the next one. So look at the language here. Is not, as his name suggests, an irrepressible sidekick in a minor Mozart opera. Sidekick, opera. Look at the vivid imagination that the author is bringing in, egging his master on to commit extravagant japes. Jape is a practical joke or a prank. So you generally go in for a jape when you want to make someone laugh or when you want to trick someone. So prank, practical jokes. So he's not a sidekick, he's a research director. Then he's previously written books on some topics, and now it is the turn of the tired. And then there are some examples from that particular book. And then, will the agony never cease? This sentence does have some importance. Then third paragraph. So theme is so extensive that you would expect it to begin from there. And then, oh, there is an interesting word, Borgesian fable. So there was this author called George Louis Borges, very famous Argentinian writer. He did not really get a Nobel, etc. He, for that matter, did not even write a novel, but he wrote short stories and amazing short stories. So there is this genre of stories called, or novels called, magic realism. So although it talks about the real world, but then the magic bit, the absurd bits are weaved in so beautifully that they don't even at times stand out. So in that sense, he has actually affected a lot of other authors and writers who came after it. So his stories are very original, clever, thought-provoking, imbued with magical realism. And that is why you can imagine a story in which you have a fatiguologist who want to cover every aspect of fatigue, dies of sheer inanition. Inanition is exhaustion caused by lack of nutrition. Inanition in French English can also mean to die of starvation with the project incomplete. Imagine. And then there are the book, the passage goes ahead and talks about the beginning of the book, and thereafter it says that okay, then it eventually reached starting from the Middle Ages and then eventually reached the contemporary world. So that's where it ends. So let us go ahead and dive into our questions. So question number 1, which of the following best describes the attitude of the author towards the book A History of Fatigue? So attitude is essentially, a tone-based question. So one of the first things that we ask ourselves is, the author was positive, negative, or neutral? So what's your take? I would say that the author was negative. And the moment you say negative, impressed and ambivalent are both gone. So ambivalent is when you are indecisive, when you're not able to make up your mind, and when you are torn between the choices that are in front of you. Now you may wonder that negative, what if you did not see that negativity? So let me take you over to some of the paths. Let's just revisit this. Okay, so let's start here. Look at it, in frankly draining detail. That's one negative. Then look at this last sentence. Will the agony never cease? Now read it in the context of the examples offered. So French tailors working for 14 to 18 hours. Then World War I combatants. That's still okay. But then supermarket cashier who struck by terrible pain after lifting a pack of bottled water. I mean, normally we wouldn't even consider that an agony. I mean, it should not perhaps even be a part of the book. But then, will the agony never cease? This bit of drama thrown in tells you that the author is actually making fun. And then look at this particular paragraph. As a theme, fatigue is so extensive that demarcating it is no simple task. This is still okay. But then look at this part. If you're expecting it to begin with the Iliad, you are doomed to disappointment. When are you disappointed by a book written on a topic that you would not even consider mainstream? And that too disappointed because, oh, why did he not start with Iliad? I would have loved to read that. And then look at the attitude, the tone that is conveyed by this sentence. And these all indicate that we are moving towards the territory of negative. So A and C, so B and D are gone, A and C are left in running. Look at A. The author is skeptical of Vigarello's historical approach to the subject of fatigue and sees it as limited. Is the author skeptical of his historical approach? Is that the case? So skeptical is where you believe that his approach is not likely to work. And does he find it limited, or does he already, remember, 9 centuries and 300 pages later, find it a bit too lengthy? Combine that with this part, frankly draining detail of the first paragraph, draining detail. So you would know that he definitely does not consider it limited. That part that I've highlighted here for you from the first paragraph directly contradict it, and therefore we can also rule out A and narrow it down to C. So that's question number 1. Here is your next question. Which of the following best explains the purpose of this particular sentence? So if you go back to the context where this sentence is presented, here it is, let me take you back to it. You'd realize that it follows the first sentence of the paragraph. First sentence says, as a theme, fatigue is so extensive and so intrinsic to the fact of being alive that demarcating where it begins or ends is no simple task. So then you've been offered an example or an analogy. One can imagine a Borgesian fable, right? So this example, this illustration, this detail is provided to help us see that fatigue is very extensive. And if we look at this extensive bit, then A does not really go ahead and talk about it. You can eliminate it. B, to suggest that fatigue is such a broad topic that it is impossible to cover every facet of it. That's closer to the first sentence. Okay, so it's an example or an analogy given so that we can understand the first sentence better. So you're looking for an answer choice that is closest to the idea of that first sentence. So B does give that to us to a certain extent. How about C? Are we comparing his work to a Borgesian fable? No. It is an analogy drawn, but to prove the point that fatigue is extensive. The core point is not to compare Vigarello's work or writing to Borges' writing. Okay, then D, to emphasize the importance of understanding the limitations of a comprehensive study of fatigue, does not capture that first sentence, right? And therefore even D can be eliminated. B comes closest to the idea presented by the first sentence and should therefore be chosen as our answer. And with that, let's have a look at the next one. Question number 3. So the author adds a comment in the last paragraph. Sounds to me like last Thursday. Let me take you back to that particular place. Now, what do you think? What is the utility here? So we are talking about a person from the Middle Ages, from the medieval times, Constantine the African, 11th century physician. What was the caution? What is it that he cautioned against? You must avoid and reject heavy burdens and cares, because excessive worrying dries out our bodies, leaches out our vital energies, fostering despair in our minds and sucking out the substance from our bones. So basically, avoid and reject heavy burdens and cares because of these things that happen. Now, when the author says sounds to me like last Thursday, what does it mean? It is essentially a sentence written here that tells us that, oh, I have seen this situation. I think it somehow sounds like what happened to me last Thursday. So it's a humorous, witty way of conveying that. So we are looking for an answer choice that says that, oh, the author thinks that these are features or things that happen even in contemporary times. Their advice has not become outdated. So have a look at A. The author is suggesting that his warning is still relevant today as we can identify with those situations. Sounds good to me. How about B? The author is mocking Constantine the African's outdated. Now, that very sentence tells you that it is not outdated. So B is definitely wrong. C, the author is implying that they are constantly fatigued and can relate to Constantine's. So I have two problems. Number one, it is too literal an interpretation. It does not really mean that the author is fatigued. Okay. Moreover, where do we get this word constantly from? And if it is constant, why would it sound like last Thursday? Then something that is a constant part of your life, you would say that, oh, that sounds like my life. Then you would not say that, oh, that sounds like last Thursday. This by itself tells you that it was episodic in nature and not a permanent part. So C can also be eliminated. D, the author is suggesting that the topic of fatigue has been discussed for so long that even an 11th century physician was it's not even linking it with contemporary times, and therefore going by the paragraph we can very easily opt for A as our answer for question number 3. And here comes the last question of the passage. So unconventional approach. Any part? So the truth is, when I look at the entire passage, I feel that the author has been sarcastic at multiple places. He's used sarcasm, he has used wit, but we nonetheless need to pick up the best answer choice. So I went back and zeroed down to this particular part of the passage. Now here is a sentence. It says, if you are expecting a history of fatigue to begin with the Iliad, remember Homer, Iliad, Odyssey, we are talking about 6th century before Common Era. So starting from that long ago, you are doomed to disappointment. So this is the only part which shows that somebody may have an expectation and that expectation may not have been met. So this is given to us only in answer choice C. You notice, does not begin his history of fatigue with the Iliad as one might expect. The others do not even come close. So if you look at A, the author describes Vigarello's inclusion of French trailer, describes, does not tell you how it is unconventional. Again, how is the author unconventional in B and D? Vigarello's despondent afterword in which he discusses, but where is this afterword? It was not an afterword, right? Besides, the paragraph does not say that it was unconventional. In fact, the passage goes on to tell us that it was inadequate because he should also have included long form COVID. And therefore, when it comes to question number 4, we should not hesitate in choosing C as our answer to this particular question. So that takes care of our first passage.